This online version of Tenebrae is for the Union Memorial Church of Stamford, Connecticut to observe on Maundy Thursday, April 9th of the year 2020. On Maundy Thursday, our church traditionally gathers for communion and Tenebrae. Since we cannot gather as a church family for communion this year in light of the pandemic, this slideshow hopefully will recreate for you a way to experience at home our traditional Tenebrae worship service. The purpose of this service is to relive some of the emotions sensed during the final hours of Jesus' life. The service aims to recreate a sense of abandonment, betrayal, and agony that Jesus and eyewitnesses of the crucifixion experienced. I encourage you to find a quiet space where you will not be interrupted, so that you can be mindful and attentive to the emotions you sense. Tenebrae comes from the Latin word for shadows. At the start of the service in our sanctuary, an acolyte lights 14 candles on the candelabras. 6 readers go up to the lectern one at a time and read a brief episode from the last hours of Jesus' life, mostly from the Gospel of Matthew. After each of the 6 readers finishes, the acolyte extinguishes 2 candles. Then the congregation sings one of the 6 verses from the moving spiritual chorus, "Were You There?" Before the last 2 candles are extinguished, a person reads from John chapter 1, verses 1 through 9, which describes Jesus as the light of the world. Then the lights in the sanctuary are dimmed. There is no benediction. Instead, everyone leaves in silence. This adapted online version of Tenebrae includes audio readings of the scripture passages read by 7 members of our congregation and 6 verses of "Were You There?" sung by members and friends of our congregation. The lyrics are provided so you can join and sing with them. You may want to place 7 candles on a table before you. If so, pause the slideshow now so that you can light all of them before resuming the slideshow. Then extinguish one at a time as we proceed. If you don't have 7 candles, just use one and extinguish it after the 7th reading. After you extinguish the last candle at the conclusion of the 7th Bible reading, pause to let the emotional impact of Jesus' death weigh on you. Let some silence rest inside you so that you may be in touch with your emotions.
A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 27 to 31. The soldiers mock Jesus. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and they put a scarlet robe on him, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and they put his clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 32 through 37. Now as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they had come to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull, they gave him sour wine, mingled with gall to drink. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink it. Then they crucified him, and divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there, and they put up over his head the accusation written against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree?
The reading according to the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verses 31 through 37. Now it was the day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath, because the Jews did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath. They asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. The soldiers, therefore, came and broke the legs of the first men who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows that he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you also may believe. These things happen so that the scripture would be fulfilled. Not one of the bones will be broken. And as another scripture says, they will look on the one they have pierced. This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Whoa, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble.
This is a reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 45 through 50. The death of Jesus. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came all over the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine, vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine?
A reading from Matthew chapter 27, verses 57 through 61. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
This is a reading from Matthew chapter 27, verses 62 through 66. The next day, one after the preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "you remember that while he was alive, the deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body, and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. This is the word of the Lord.
Were you there when they sealed him in the tomb? Were you there when they sealed him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they sealed him in the tomb?
A reading of God according to John chapter 1, verses 1 through 9. The Word became flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. This is the word of the Lord.